of the day. We are very fortunate to have with us today Ros Goldsborough from New Zealand. Now, for those of you who may not know Ros, or this is your first time hearing her, Ros is the Education Director of the Unity National School, Australia and New Zealand. Ros is a licensed Unity teacher and a Master Prosperity teacher. Ros is committed to sharing Unity teachings and helping all of us apply the transformational principles to our own lives and live our best lives possible. So please enjoy, Ros, and over to you.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you for inviting me to be with you today. I've chosen a book out of the Bible, the book of Ruth, to share with you. And you may know this story already. And when I was out at the Unity Village doing my studies, we had to, of course, turn up to our Bible classes with our Bible and our metaphysical Bible dictionary and all those things, carting them around. In the first Bible class, I had to open this and it creaked. It meant it hadn't been opened before. I was like, oh, quite embarrassed. And honestly, I didn't really know the stories in the Bible. And even though I'd done Bible classes when I was a teenager, but it was all pretty new to me. And when I read the book of Ruth, I was kind of, oh, I'm so glad we don't take this all literally, because here's the story, and you may well know this story, but here the story is that Ruth is a young woman living in Moab, and this family moves from Bethlehem, from Judah, and with two sons, and one of those sons marries Ruth. So Ruth moves out of her family home and into this family, but they're living in Moab. And then about 10 years pass, and her father-in-law dies, and then her husband, in fact, both the sons die. So this family suddenly has no males to provide, to bring in an income. And in the tradition of the day, of course, that meant that there was no provision for the widows. There was nothing for them to fall back on, except in that culture was that it would be expected that the two daughters-in-law would go back to their family homes. And Naomi, the mother-in-law, Ruth's mother-in-law, was planning to go back to Bethlehem, where her family, some kinfolk would be, not knowing what she would be available for her. In fact, she's in great distress being a widow. She's absolutely feels like God has abandoned her. And so she's heading off to Bethlehem, and she's telling her two daughters-in-law, now you go back to your family. And Ruth says, no, I'm coming with you. Now, this is a huge thing for someone to say. She's saying, no, I'm going to come with you, and we'll go to Bethlehem. There's absolutely no idea of what the future will hold for them. I guess that, in that tradition, if Ruth goes back to her family, there's no guarantee that she'll be looked after. In fact, widows at the time often turned to prostitution to be able to survive. But Ruth persists, and she goes with Naomi, and they go back to Bethlehem. And when they get there, the only work that Ruth can find is not paid work at all. It's actually following along after the harvest, the barley harvest, and picking up the remains, the things that the harvesters have left behind. And then she can take those pickings and go into the town and get some money and then get some provisions. So that's what she does. And in the story, she gets noticed by the owner of the field, who happens to be a wealthy older man, Boaz, and he he starts to look out for her and tells the harvesters, no, leave some of the barley that she can take, and so that she's not having to really scrape a living. And when Naomi hears about what's happened, she says, so who was that who was looking out for you? And Ruth tells her it was Boaz, and Naomi realizes that Boaz is actually kin for her. He is a relation of her deceased husband. So she tells Ruth, and this, when I'm reading this story, she tells Ruth, well, go and lie at his feet. Like, what? Go and lie at his feet. I mean, what an extraordinary thing, in a sense, to say. Basically, go and jump into bed with him, is the message, and see where that'll get you. Well, where it gets her is that Ruth and Boaz end up getting married, and she has a baby, and she becomes an ancestress of Jesus. Now, when I'm looking at the story from this kind of literal point of view, it's like, oh, I'm not sure I want to promote that idea that, if things are hard for you and you go off and find a rich guy and jump into bed with him, it's like, not sure this is a good message. So it wasn't until I was looking at it metaphysically that I go, oh, it changed how I looked at it. So that's what I want to do with us today, is just go through this story from the metaphysical point of view and see whether, oh, this is a story that you can relate to as well. Because for me, this is a prosperity story. And it's an internal prosperity story. It's not a what you do in the outer, but with the change that happens in our consciousness. So the main characters, when we look at these stories metaphysically, we see all the characters and all the places are actually parts of our own consciousness. They are the areas where we can make shifts. So we have the main characters in this story: Ruth, Naomi, the land of Moab, Bethlehem, and Boaz. So we look at these two women, Ruth and Naomi. So Ruth has a longing for a better life, and she thinks she'll find it by going with Naomi to Bethlehem. So think about this in terms of yourself. Within us, we can have this longing for something better. We can have this desire for more in our life. And we don't want to settle for the old life. So that part of us, that discontent that we might feel, which Naomi is expressing, can be in there at the same time. We can feel like, this is not, I don't feel like I've got my whole expanded life that is I'd like it. I'm frustrated with things as they are. That's what Naomi was expressing. She was expressing this deep discontent with how her life had turned out. So we can have both these things going on within us at the same time. And they are residing at this moment in the land of Moab. And this is the external conditions of life, is what Moab really means. When we're focused on the outer, so Naomi and Ruth had both had a beautiful life, married, and they were well looked after. But when their marriages had gone, when they were widows, Naomi's starting to think that God has abandoned her, that in fact, when she returns to Bethlehem, she gets people to start calling her Mara instead of Naomi. Mara means bitterness or resentment. So sometimes we can feel resentful about the conditions that life seems to be throwing at us. I can remember that so well when I was heavily in debt. I felt as if life was not treating me fairly. And so I was looking at the external conditions. So they moved to Bethlehem. Bethlehem means house of bread, substance, a place where, and we know from our unity teachings that this is a place where out of which good can come, anything can come when we focus on it. And Boaz represents richness of thought, cheerful willingness, and strength of character. So in this story with Naomi going back to Bethlehem and Ruth determined to go with her, we hear these words from Ruth: do not press me to leave you, to turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. I'm going to stop share here for a moment because I realized that when I shared the screen just before, I forgot to share sound, because I want to play for you a beautiful song that Sue Riley wrote to capture this idea of Ruth's about going with what your heart desires. So let me share screen again and I'll play that for you and share sound so that you can hear it. And I will ask you, someone, to make sure that you can hear this.
With my back to the past, I let everything go. I'm leaving behind me the life I have known. In this meadow of memories, nothing can grow. I am leaving this life I have known. There are those who will say it is safer to stay where the voices around me all call me by name. But I'll follow the longing that leads me away from the voices that call me by name. Don't ask me to give up this dream. Wherever it takes me, I'll go. No matter how hopeless this journey may seem, don't ask me to give up this dream. I will gather my good from the seeds of the past. My blessings will come by the work of my hand. From the heat of the day to the sunset at last, I'll be blessed by the work of my hands. Don't ask me to give up this dream. Wherever it takes me, I'll go. No matter how hopeless this journey may seem, don't ask me to give up this dream. Don't ask me to give up this dream. Wherever it takes me, I'll go. No matter how hopeless this journey may seem, don't ask me to give up this dream. Don't ask me to give up this dream.
I'm going to invite you just to take a moment with that idea in a time of meditation, contemplation. Don't ask me to give up this dream. What is love asking of you? Where is it wanting to lead you? What would you love? Allow yourself to settle into a moment of silence as you contemplate those questions. And so as you think about what is it you would love, we know that Ruth and Naomi do go to Bethlehem and Ruth becomes a gleaner. So when we think about this in terms of our own progress in our prosperity consciousness, she's doing what she can with what she has from where she is. When you do that, and you think about what can you do from where you are with what you have, then something in the story, of course, we have Boaz noticing. But what does that mean for us metaphysically? It means that because you've got this dream of a greater, more fulfilling life in some way, then your higher power, that part of us that is that strength of character, that willingness, notices. And when you jump into bed with it, as Naomi encouraged Ruth to go and lie at his feet, when you, in your consciousness, couple up with this higher thought, with this richness of thought, then you can achieve the great things that you may be looking at. Jana Stanfield wrote this song, "What would I do today if I were brave?" So think about this as we play, as I play this song. And there are lots of examples on the screen when I play this that you might want to look at. What would you do today if you were brave?
What would I do if I knew that I could not fail? If I believed, would the wind always fill up my sails? How far would I go? What could I achieve? Trusting the hero in me. If I were brave, I'd walk the razor's edge, where true believers dare to tread, and never lose faith, even when losing my way. What step would I take today if I were brave? What would I do today if I what we secretly dream. What would you ask if you knew you could have anything? Like the mighty oak sleeps in the heart of a seed, are there miracles in you and me? You know there are. If I were brave, I'd walk the razor's edge, where true believers dare to tread, and never lose faith, even when losing my way. What step would I take today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? What would I do today if I were brave? If I refuse to listen to the voice of fear, would the voice of courage whisper in my ear? Maybe this is what I'd hear. I am brave enough to move ahead, where true believers dare to tread, never lose faith, even when losing my way. What step will I take today? I am brave. What will I do 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 today? I am
So what would you do today if you were brave? And in the story, we know that Boaz and Ruth do come together and they do get married and have a child. And in this marriage that Boaz organizes, he ensures that Ruth has an inheritance. He organizes it so that she gets the land that had been in Naomi's family. And as a result, she becomes the ancestress of Jesus. So claim your inheritance, because this is the story really of how we do this, is that we may have fears, we may have doubts, but when we move forward, we do what we can with what we have from where we are. If we take the brave action, then we're in a position of claiming our inheritance. So say this with me. I claim my millionaire inheritance of increased wealth, health, and happiness now. I claim my millionaire inheritance of increased health, wealth, and happiness now. And once more, for May Rowland, well, actually for Grace Merrick. I claim my millionaire inheritance of increased health, wealth, and happiness now. So this is a prosperity story, a story of a shift in consciousness. It's a journey in the outer from widowhood to great wealth. and she becomes immortalized as an ancestress of Jesus. But for us, it's a story about how we can shift in our consciousness from a place of lack and limitation to great wealth. So what would you do today if you were brave? And there we end the story.
Thank you so much, Ros. Let's everybody, I know you can't hear us, but let's all give her
I can see you.
I'm
Thank you.
clapping as loud as I can for everybody.